And then I will find you, and you will scream for years.
Come and play with us forever and ever.
What is up, guys? Thank you again for stopping by to my channel. Today we're talking about one of my more anticipated movies for the latter half of 2019, Stephen King's adaptation of Dr. Sleep. I was so excited to catch this movie today doing the Fandango early screening, so tell me in the comments below, what did you think about this movie? But in the meantime, let's talk Dr. Sleep. Years following the events of The Shining, a now adult Dan Torrance meets a young girl with similar powers as his and tries to protect her from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. So though I was anticipating this movie, I really had no idea up to this year that Stephen King actually wrote a sequel to The Shining, which was released back in 2013. I'm actually behind on what he writes. I don't really read a lot of his books up until this year with all the great adaptations that have been made. I thought Pet Sematary was good. I thought It Chapter 1 and 2 were both great. And with this coming up, finding out it was a sequel to The Shining, I was really excited. And now I actually own the book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But from what I heard, people that have read the book were actually excited to see this be brought to life on the screen, something that everyone's been waiting for. And even Stephen King himself said that he was happy with the finished material of this movie, because if some of you know movies, you know that he wasn't really happy with Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining. Now, this is fair that the author may not like the finished work of a film, and I can understand why he didn't like it, because I'm actually halfway through The Shining and I could see a lot of differences from the book to the movie. Now, I have not read Dr. Sleep, so I can't really say what was really different from that book to this film, but as I already said, Stephen King himself said that he's impressed with how the book transitioned to the film. But not only that, for people who love the book, you should be happy with the material you see in this film, but for people who have loved The Shining, this movie plays great homage to that film as well. So it's a nice little mix of paying tribute to a great classic, but also respecting the source material. But this movie, I think it met all my expectations. It's not the typical horror movie. I don't really consider it horror or thriller. It's almost very cerebral, and it's just a continuation of The Shining about 40 years later. And this is a story of Danny, of what happens to him after the events of The Shining. And if some of you don't know this, Stephen King said he got an idea after a fan of his asked him, whatever happened to Danny after The Shining? That's what kind of triggered this idea to write this book. And yes, this story is all about Danny, but it's also about so many other things. Multiple storylines going on with the True Knot. You meet this other girl named Abra that has powers just like Danny. And it just blends in a way that it just works. And you don't see a lot of movies like that nowadays, how the storylines are on top of each other as it is. And it's kind of like how The Shining was in a way, even though there weren't as many plots going on in that movie. But it somehow worked for this film, and I found it really entertaining. And as I already said, this movie blends the film along with the source material for this book. But what we get as a result is an entirely new world within a familiar world from The Shining. And Mike Flanagan does it such a great way. We have the first 10 to 15 minutes that kind of bring Danny back. We see where he was, kind of like a continuation off of The Shining into this movie, and we see him grown up. But then the last 30 minutes or so is the finale that brings us back to the Overlook Hotel. And I cannot tell you, those are my favorite moments. Even though we're looking into Danny growing up, just going back and seeing The Shining again, recreated as it was, Mike Flanagan did such an amazing job in recreating the production design of that hotel. But not only that, the actors, the ones who portrayed Wendy, Mr. Callahan, young Danny, all of them were spot on. They looked like them, they sounded like them. Everything was just brought to a T, just so that we would not ruin the illusion of what we were used to seeing in the 1980 film. But at the same time, Mike Flanagan brought to life Dr. Sleep, and he is a fantastic director. I always recommend everyone to check out on Netflix The Haunting of Hill House. That is probably one of the most terrifying shows I've ever seen, and not a lot really scares me. And this is a TV show on Netflix, and this one creeped the hell out of me. But that was probably a good thing. One of the many reasons why I was excited to hear that he was going to be directing this movie. Now, with Dr. Sleep, it didn't really scare me as much as it did for The Haunting of Hill House. But what I like what this director does for both that show and this movie is that he creates a world with intelligent writing and just really interesting themes in the storyline, but it also has a very eerie, horrifying atmosphere, and it still gives you the same feelings that you would get out of a typical horror film, just with a great premise and just great writing involved in it. And I can't not talk about this movie without mentioning Ewan McGregor. This man is like Tom Hanks. He can do anything in any movie or show if he wanted to, and could do no wrong. And I say Tom Hanks too because he's a guy that every film he makes, in my opinion, is good. With Ewan McGregor, he is just so great in every film that I have seen. Even movies that, I hate to say it, but the Star Wars prequel trilogy is not the best, but he's one of the reasons why it works so well. And he does a great job in portraying a character that we have not seen on the screen for nearly 40 years. And he's obviously 40 years older than the child version of Danny. And he does an amazing job, as he always does. But the rest of the cast is great too. Rebecca Ferguson is another one in this movie that she's kind of a show stealer. She is perfect as a villain. I'd never seen her play this type of role before, and everyone else in this cast is great, including the ones I already mentioned about the people that portray characters that we had seen in the previous film. But those two primarily, they made up which a lot of what I think is going to keep embedded in my mind on when I think of this movie, just the characters that those two had played. But overall, everyone was very memorable. And what's the takeaway from this? You have a movie that presents a lot of nostalgia and Easter eggs from a very classic movie. You have a director which I think was the best choice for this type of movie, and you have actors portraying very memorable characters. And for what I'm also hearing, it's a great novel that was transitioned into a movie. I'll find out later on as I read it. But overall, I still have to say this may be one of the better adaptations for a Stephen King novel, even though I haven't read it yet, but it was very well done in regards to the filmmaking style. Overall, I will be giving it a good review. If you want to check it out on my Letterboxd, that will be up later tonight. But guys, I want to hear from you all as usual. Tell me in the comments below, what did you think about it? But those are my thoughts on Dr. Sleep. Thank you guys so much for hearing me out. If you like what you saw, don't forget to click that like button and also consider subscribing to my channel so we can talk movies and more. I'll see you later.